Just like me, as a result, did you miss the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power's appearance of the dwarves and Númenóreans last week? Fortunately, you are. We didn't have enough time to check in with everyone on a weekly basis in Season 1 due to the size of the ensemble, as I am aware of. However, it felt like the stories were less obvious last season because they were often so intertwined. Although Sauron's menace brilliantly highlights the fact that these characters are all struggling with the fallout from the same major events, their storylines are becoming increasingly disconnected from one another. Nevertheless, let's stop avoiding them, in Khazad-dûm, where the 7 rings for the dwarf lords have been given. Episode 5 opens. Even though all of the others are calling to King Durin, Peter Mullen, he is the first to take his. It's important to note that even though the elves have the rings, they can hear and see things they couldn't before, but initially, there isn't the same sense of evil surrounding them. Perhaps Elrond was right after all. As they show the king around the mines, Narvi explains that their efforts to find additional sun shafts are failing miserably since they are simply making the mountain more unstable. The king leads Narvi and Prince Durin up onto one of the ridges, where he firmly chooses a location and gives them instructions to dig. It turns out that the ring he is wearing, which is informing King Durin to give the order for the others to drill straight into a load-bearing wall, is what gives him the confidence instead of his natural understanding of their home. When his son hesitates, the king takes his complaints personally and gets up with a pickaxe to do the task himself. Until the bet pays off and sunlight starts flowing into the mine, it appears like their concerns of a cave-in are well-founded. They prudently ignore the other miners. Though this does not augur well for future ring-related objections. For the time being, at least, Khazad-dûm's concerns are relieved when King Durin is guided by the ring to enough sun-filled areas. Princess Disa, Sophia Namvit, is far less relieved than Prince Durin. Maybe her singing of stones didn't lead them to any shafts, but now what is the mountain telling her? With Narvi and a small group in attendance, Celebrimbor is celebrating the success of the dwarven rings over in Eregion. In honor of their partnership, the two open the doors of Durin, the mountain's new west gate, which will appear eerily familiar to anyone who recalls a particular ring fellowship choosing to bypass the mines of Moria. As the dwarves and elves rejoice, Charlie Vickers's character Annatar retreats to the balcony to pout. He puts on a show, informing Celebrimbor that the reason for his mood is that he is thinking about the people who are now suffering the most at the hands of Mordor, men. Celebrimbor pulls Annatar out for his attempts at reverse psychology after realizing that, although he still hasn't given up on the rings for men theory, he is still hesitant to take any action for them. They argue over the worthiness of men, with Annatar claiming that Númenor is so unstable that it is the reason for his concerns and Celebrimbor claiming that everybody from the Southlands who didn't aid Adar in his conquest has been granted new homes by Númenóreans. Annatar argues that rings for men will stabilize Númenor. But Celebrimbor is emphatic that they cannot do it since, corruptible as men are, the potential damage would outweigh any good that might result. Rather than using reverse psychology as Celebrimbor says, Annatar's main tactic is to state just enough accurate things to make the deceptive claim seem like an indisputable fact. In this instance, he proposes that they hand-pick the recipients of the rings this time to make sure they are noble and pure of heart. He provides abundant examples of decent. Then, he suggests that they choose 9 kings of men, which would be the elven 3 multiplied by 3. This is where his argument breaks down because absolute monarchy and pure of heart aren't typically associated with each other. Even after that disagreement, Celebrimbor continues to believe it would be too risky, and Annatar agrees, stating he will just build the rings himself. And hey, this sounds like a good time to check in with Pharazôn, speaking of absolute kings who aren't noble or pure of heart at all. Wearing a red and white outfit, he took both my idea and Miriel's throne. He contemplates on how immortality is beyond human reach, which seems to worry even his son Kemen, Leon Wadham. Pharazôn finds Kemen's advice to enjoy his kingship to the fullest rather than striving for ever greater heights objectionable. He informs Kemen that his mother foretold his destiny when he was a baby, but she won't share this information with him until he completes a duty for her. As all of this is going on, Miriel is still in shock at her botched coronation up in her tower. Lloyd Owen's character Elendil reassures her that there are still many people who support her and that the Sea Guard would obey her orders. Putting her palm on his chest, she stops him in a gesture that takes too many beats for her to be merely attempting to sense where he is in her space. In case you were wondering. Yeah, these 5 seconds are more than enough for me to dig my nails into my face in shipper-related misery. They both know it too, for the moment he reaches for her hand, she snaps back. When she asks Elendil what he saw when he touched the Palantir, he only says that he saw himself riding out of the city. Even though it is unclear to him, Miriel finds the vision hopeful. She informs him that all she has seen for years is their city's demise, and if the vision has changed, then Pharazôn's leadership must be a component of that transformation. Now that they've taken a sharp left turn and adopted the philosophy that everything happens for a reason, Miriel tells Elendil to stay calm and deal with whatever comes his way while telling him to return to his ship to weather the storm. She's smart to play the long game and see how things work out, but I wonder whether it ever thought to her or to him that Elendil might have been riding out of the city because it had already fallen. Though it seems unlikely that he would give up without a struggle, what if there were unusual circumstances? When Elendil arrives at the harbor, Keeman and Irian, Emma Horvath, are keeping a close check on the Sea Guard as they all surrender their uniforms. Irian ordered Valandil, Alex Tarrant, to take away their rank if they were thought to be loyal to Miriel. Elendil is not impressed by his daughter's social climbing at the expense of others, but she insists that all she does stems from her brother's death. I can see bitterness arising from loss, but I find myself wondering how far Irian will go in self-deception before she acknowledges that Pharazôn is not the panacea she appears to believe he is. Elendil gives his sword to Pharazôn as a sign of loyalty, knowing full well that no sane person would support him in any case. As he departs, the remaining waiting former Sea Guard members salute their commander, and Keeman clarifies that he is no longer truly their captain. Though I also think I'm far wiser than Keeman, I also feel like I wouldn't stand there and publicly irritate sailors who are now worthless after having just alienated an entire fleet. Even though Elendil admits that he is no longer their captain, they nevertheless give Keeman no respect and continue to salute ferociously. Valandil rejects Irian's attempt to persuade him to remove him from the list when she suggests that she petition the king to do so. Since Keeman's expression indicates that he disapproves of the way Irian touches Valandil's arm, thus it's okay to add Incel to the list of his transgressions. Pharazôn chooses to confer with the Palantir, demonstrating that deceit is still very much in practice. In Season 2, Episode 5, the Rings of Power cause problems for both dwarves and elves. Dissa is still struggling with her emotions over King Durrant's newly discovered talent for locating sun shafts back in Khazad-dûm. She finds it unfair that the king is avoiding the Stonesinger's lifetime of experience in conversing with the mountain. It's amazing that the Gen AI discourse has reached Middle-earth as well. However, Durrant insists that his father is an expert in this matter. That assertion is almost immediately put to the test when the couple goes shopping for their daughter's birthday present and discovers that the marketplace has doubled in price. Dwarves. They're just like us, because of the king's new law, which mandates that 1 coin from every coin a merchant makes must also go to the crown. Dissa drops a perfectly round tuning crystal that they manage to bargain for a better price on, and it rolls straight through the market and down into a tunnel. Dissa discovers an unexplored cavern with a lake in the middle after venturing hilariously far into the tunnel. Her attempt to sing to the stone awakens something in the water. As this is going on, Durrant gathers the messengers from the other dwarven worlds to give them the remaining rings, inform their lords that the rings have a cost attached with them, and convey this information to them. Following the conference, the king meets with Narvi to map out potential dig locations. At this point, it's getting absurdly obvious that the king is telling him to ignore all prior safety precautions in order to dig deeper. When he discovers that his ring is gone, he first snaps at Narvi before realizing that the king removed the band on his own and said it felt heavy. Although the elves appear to be depending on their rings, they do not appear to possess the same addictive properties as the dwarf rings. As Prince Durrant arrives to warn them about what Dissa saw beneath the mines, calling the thing an ancient evil, Narvi is about to leave, but the king orders Narvi to urge the miners to continue digging. He maintains that Dissa is mistaken to suggest there is danger beneath the mines, focusing instead on the potential for finding treasure and diamonds. In a region, Celebrimbor is alerted to trouble by Merdania, one of his smiths. He rushes into the forge to see tools moving of their own free and violent will, after Annatar tells him Merdania was trying to resize a new ring they designed. It's only in catching one of the tools that he's able to trace it back to Merdania herself, who is wearing the ring and has gone invisible as a result. She tells them she saw a space much like the forge, but dark and foggy, and containing a creature made of flames, likely sensing the Sauron in the room. Celebrimbor asked them what they changed in the design, and Merdania explains that they added more mithril to offset the corrupting nature of the ring. The elven smith knows that's not the answer to fixing the ring, but now suddenly can't remember what the right answer actually is. Annatar tries to prompt him to advise them, but Celebrimbor can't bring himself to answer. Just as he clues in that something might be wrong, he receives word that Prince Durin is there to see him, and refuses Annatar's offer to go instead. Durin explains the changes he's seen in his father to Celebrimbor, but the smith shuts down the idea that the change in personality is brought about by the rings. Then, Durin suggests that the problem stems from Annatar instead. As they talk, Annatar lingers above them on the balcony, likely eavesdropping, but he doesn't stay long as he has other matters to attend to, namely playing the seductive game with Merdania. In contrast to Season 1, where Galadriel required Halbrand to be a fierce, powerful, and future king of men, Merdania would profit more from Annatar's ability to listen sympathetically in a stressful situation. He claims to have seen the unseen world as well, and he manipulates her perception of what she saw to mean that Celebrimbor's mental state has deteriorated as a result of making the rings. He then promises that she will keep what he has told her a secret. When she does, he says with aplomb that she looks just like Galadriel in the firelight, and while I doubt she knows what's going on with this old situationship of his, she also doesn't appear upset to hear it. Over in Numenor, many of the faithful, including Elendil and Valandil, gather at the oldest shrine in the city to mourn those who were lost in the fighting. Their ceremony is interrupted by Keeman's arrival, as he announces the shrine is now condemned, and set to be knocked down to build a new aqueduct. Most of those assembled leave, but before Elendil can, Keeman throws a barb about Irian being ashamed of her father. Elendil is about to confront Keeman, when Valandil stops him, and before they go, Elendil says he will escort the priest out as well. The priest, however, won't leave without his relic, which Keeman smashes in front of the priest with a smug smile on his face. As if I didn't think Elendil wasn't hot as it is. He punches Keeman right in the face. Really, my only critique is that he didn't follow that one punch up with 6 or 7 more. Keeman has his men restrain Elendil so he can hit him back, so brave, when Valandil intervenes and throws Keeman against one of the columns. Really, this scene is so very satisfying, right up until the moment where Valandil has his sword to Keeman's throat, but stays his hand at Elendil's request. I understand he would have been in mountains of trouble if he'd killed or maimed Keeman, but at least he wouldn't be dead. Which is what Valandil becomes when Keeman stabs him in the back. At least he broke Keeman's arm before he shuffled off this mortal coil, so that's something. As if Keeman hasn't caused enough trouble, he has Elendil arrested for starting it. Back in Eregion, Celebrimbor privately insists there is validity to Durin's claim that the ring is corrupting his father, insisting there's something wrong with them. Annatar warns Celebrimbor that perhaps he's being manipulated. Gee, you think? He asks Annatar if he did anything to the rings, and Annatar says that he didn't do it, but they did, by lying to Gil-galad about what they were doing in the forge, thereby tainting them with his dishonesty. He tells Celebrimbor to go to Lindon and confess what he's done. Celebrimbor tries to talk to the smiths about the flaws in the design, but Merdania pushes back on the critique, saying they were precise in their work. Concerned that the group will forge more faulty rings without him, he says the group will forge the 9 rings together, and any failure on their part will see them dismissed. Annatar gives them a motivational speech while Celebrimbor retreats to his office, clearly terrified of whatever is happening to him. Trouble is around the corner, though, as the orcs are practically at the gates. things aren't going much better in Khazad-dûm, as Durin tries to convince his father something is wrong with the rings. But the king is unwilling to listen. Instead, he thanks his son for partnering with the elves to get them the rings, and asks him to stand at his side, reinstating his title and inheritance. It's what Annatar suggested might happen, so he did get what he wanted, but at what cost? He goes home to Dissa, now wearing his princely collar again, and tells her his father won't listen. She makes him swear never to take one of the rings for himself, and he swears it to her. So there's that at least. Gil-galad receives Celebrimbor's deceptive letter in Lindon claiming he is no longer making rings, and his commander tells him to focus on Adar and his activities in Mordor. However, the High King appears to be stranded because his ring continues to give him visions of devastation and Sauron's ascent. Afterwards, Elrond begs the king to send their soldiers to help when he eventually shows up to inform him that the orcs are not in Mordor but are instead traveling to Eregion. Gil-galad informs him that it is not possible for the army to defeat Adar and Sauron on their own. Speaking of Adar, he recently welcomed Galadriel to his camp in Mordor. Galadriel was not taken as a prisoner. Rather, she was brought to negotiate with Adar because they both had an adversary in Eregion. Now that the second half of the season is approaching, it appears that most of the stories are finally starting to converge once more. Prime Video now has the first 5 episodes of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power Season 2 available for streaming. That's the end. Unlock the secrets of storytelling through our video, our YouTube channel's guide to the art of cinema. Join us as we delve into the narratives, the characters, and the sheer enchantment that movies bring to our lives. From script to screen, we've got it all covered. Join us as we analyze, critique, and appreciate the magic of movies. Subscribe to our channel for more videos.